Over a black primer, I'll be using stone grey as the base for the skin. As is often the case when working over black, 2 coats will be necessary in order to achieve an homogeneous result. Any light greys with a tint of color will work great as an alternative. I've chosen one with a hint of green, aiming towards a more classic sick hue. Over it, I'll do a bit of dry brushing with basic skin tone, and for it I'll be using a cheap and soft makeup brush. Before moving into the paint, I'll lightly tap my brush against the sponge of my wet palette and dry it up against a paper towel. The small amount of moisture left will help me avoid the dusty finish we often get when dry brushing. Only thing to note here is that since I'm working over an organic surface, I'll be using circular motions to avoid any noticeable brush strokes. Mixing brown into the stone grey, I'll use this darker tone to do a bit of speckling and add more realism to the skin. This can also be done with the airbrush, but since not everyone has one, I'm taking the other approach. Just like I did, I recommend you first test the dilution and finish before moving into the model. Moving on, I'll create a bit of a mottled skin look diluting red acrylic. The paint will be initially applied in a manner of a wash. However, as I'm done going over a section, I'll rinse up my brush with water and go over the same area again. At first sight, it may look like I'm simply diluting the wash even more and reducing its value. However, as the paint is applied, tiny specks will begin to dry up, and will be pushed around as I go over the same area again. Basically, this is what we're told not to do when washing. Normally, when applying a wash or contrast-like paint, we are meant to let it sit, since if we were to insist over the same area, splotches would be created. Here, I'm intentionally doing that, though by using water, I am at the same time lessening the effect as well as moving the paint around. You'll see how this looks in the end. But take note that as I add more and more water, I am even moving the paint away from the recesses, as I am not looking to have more paint deposit there, but rather create random organic patches of reddish tones here and there. Next step is to define the shadows. For it, I use the same stone grey and brown I used before, but this time mixed in a pinch of dark green to make it slightly darker and less boring than just black. I applied it specifically over on the folds on the skin as well as anywhere where the skin met other surfaces such as metals or cloth. To get the tone I was looking for to paint the veins, I had to do a bit of mixing. This light bluish color was diluted and applied in a manner of a glaze. Due to its transparency, it took around 3 layers for the color to build up. This is probably the hardest step of the paint job, but it's not necessary at all and can be skipped. Though if you're a beginner up for a challenge, give it a go. As I moved into the final step, my plan was to apply some transparent highlights of stone grey and basic skin tone, which would not cover up all the texture and tones I had worked on before. The highlights themselves were as simple as using a tapping motion over the center of the folds of skin. However, my paint jobs are not flawless, and the initial application was a bit too opaque. You can see in the back how I add more water to the mix before trying again. As a bonus, we'll have a quick look at the blot effects, starting with some universal adhesive. Normally people use Yuhu glue for this effect. I had to go for a national alternative which gave me similar results. There is no trick to this than to try it out and get a hang of it. The glue has a sweet spot where it begins to dry and creates those strings, so do a couple of testers before moving into the model. For the blood itself, I'll do a 3-stage application. First, the one which has dried out and soaked into the ground. The water will reduce its glossiness, and the black ink will change its tones to make it look dry. This will also be applied over the tentacle itself to add tone variety. The second layer is similar to the first, but adding less water and ink. This one will be applied closer to the source in the ground and once again over the whole tentacle. Finally, the untouched blood effect is reserved for the strings and their surroundings. Thank you for watching today's video, and I hope you found it helpful. Special thanks to my patrons who give me their extra support each month. If you'd like a sneak peek of what my final Halloween video will be about, hop on over there with the link in the description. All posts are open to everyone.